Hi, Chris from ChannelX here. Delighted today to be with Harmony Murphy from Google UKI and Head of Retail at Google to talk about what's happened in the recent past and what to expect from the year ahead. Welcome, Harmony.
Thank you very much, Chris. An absolute pleasure to be here.
And tell us a little bit about what you do at Google and what does that involve on a day-to-day basis?
Fundamentally, it's looking after our retail customers and helping them with their growth strategy, understanding more about their business and how we can aid and arm them to hit their aspirations, their metrics and their KPIs.
Fantastic. And we've just sort of come out of multiple crises. We've had, I can't even remember, we've had a Brexit, we've had a pandemic, we've got multiple strikes, we've got an war in Eastern Europe, we've got retailers tearing their hair out, not knowing what to do. Just before Christmas, all the couriers bought their final shipping dates a week early, which is unheard of. Normally people can buy right up to Christmas Eve. So with everything going on like this, what's the most important thing for retailers to be focusing on? What sort of direction should they be looking at for 2023?
Fantastic question, Chris, and very multifaceted. And there's a few things that I would cover within this. So the first one would definitely be about embracing automation. Now, why am I saying this? It's about driving efficiency as much as possible. So for instance, something like 80% of advertisers utilizing Google run automated bidding campaigns. It is important to do this to drive relevancy straight to the customer, but to also drive efficiency for the business. We have something, an advertising solution at Google called Performance Max, which actually looks at inventory, so shopping inventory, and matches it across Google's suite of advertising inventory so that you hit the right customer at the right time with the right product. It's a real-time solution. Another thing that I would really say that advertisers should do is embracing an omni-channel strategy. If you look at the way the economy is today, it's even more prevalent that people are in stores and online. It's not just footfall straight to the stores, but you've got that multi-channel shopping strategy, which is echoed through the way people utilize and consume technology, whether it's on your mobile phone, whether it's the laptop. And it's about brands really having that synergy in the branding journey and creating that experience in a multi-channel way. And I'll come on to hopefully a bit more of that later.
And I think that really important just before Christmas when suddenly everyone realised that they couldn't order online, there's a week to go, and how do you get consumers into store and kind of pivoting from you can't buy from us online, come to our store. So real practical experience of that for many retailers.
Completely agree, and it's having that agility, as Chris mentioned, to pivot. The next one, which I really think is super important and key here, is privacy. And when I say privacy, I'm talking about data privacy in particular here. I think it is fundamental for customers to have trust with brands when it comes to their data privacy. So making sure that data is clean. Here I'm talking about first-party data. It's aggregated, it's anonymous, and utilizing the correct tools. At Google, we do a lot in our sandbox to ensure that the data is clean and that privacy is very much at its maximum, and that will become even more prevalent when we get into 2023. The very last point I want to mention on this one would be about thinking green. Now, what do I mean by thinking green? This is around, consumers these days aren't just thinking, I'm going to go and buy this product. They're thinking, what are the values behind that? How sustainable is that particular product? What's the carbon footprint? So I think now, forefront of a brand's mind should be about thinking green, the circular economy, the sustainability piece, but doing it in a meaningful manner, a way that not only connects to the consumer, but this is going to sound a bit cheesy here, but also kind of changes the world, because brands, they have a platform to be able to create change, and consumers know that we're not just buying the product, we're buying the messaging and the brand as well.
And we're seeing that more and more. I mean, we've seen it with eBay in the run up to Christmas, where their entire Black Friday marketing was about refurbished and pre-loved.
Yes.
but also we're seeing retailers taking much more responsibility for what happens to their, especially fashion garments, after they've been bought and worn to a party. You've just worn it to New Year's Eve party. You can never wear it to another party with the same group of friends. What's going to happen to that suit or dress next?
Yeah.
And how can you put it back into the circular economy for someone else to use?
Yeah.
And I think that messaging is going to be more and more key, and not just kind of greenwashing, we plant some trees, but actual practical steps on what retailers have to offer consumers. So, Harmony, going back to just before Christmas, when people realised that nothing else was going to be delivered in time and they went to the shops, it kind of opens up the question about how can a retailer use their online presence to support their high street store. And just before Christmas, everyone had to go to the high street. But in general terms, we know a retailer that they want a sale, but they'd much rather have a sale that got you into their store and exposed you to other things. Or can you just do that online? And should you be trying to get them to shop in store, or should be with click and collect, or should you be trying to entice them into store to actually do their shopping in store?
Great question, Chris. And I think this is two-pronged. I'm going to cover 2 points here. I think it again branches back to that omni-channel strategy that I mentioned in the last question. So ensuring that you're capturing consumers with consistency across multiple channels. Now, I'm going to give an example of this. When a consumer wakes up, they may be on their mobile, and then they may go to their desktop when they get into work. So it's the different touch points across the day. And it could be simple things like geo-targeting when they're near a particular store. But it's being front of mind and thinking of the user purchase funnel, and it could be utilizing something like YouTube for discovery and inspiration. And then when someone's searching, obviously utilizing search advertising. It's about brands and advertisers really having, and to your point, that test and learn approach. It's being experimental, it's being agile, it's trying different things. And from a branding perspective, having that experience. You know, at one point you go into a store and you think this is a great experience. Now it's about also replicating that online, building that excitement so you feel that journey when you switch on your laptop, on your mobile, and then you also feel that even more in store.
So one thing that's become very, very obvious in the last couple of weeks is inflation is driving down consumer spend, and it's petrol prices, it's utility prices, it's interest rates going up, which are impacting everything from mortgages to the credit card repayments that you've already got. So we know consumer spend is kind of getting constrained. What sort of tactics, especially advertising tactics, can retailers use to try and get that available spend there is actually into their tills? And I guess there's 2 things on that. One is, how do you get consumers that do have spare cash to spend, discretionary spend to spend with you? Yeah. And the other is, for the people that are worried and they're banking their money and saving it rather than spending it, how do you convince them to sort of release the purse strings and actually start spending again?
So Chris, this correlates really, really well actually to a piece of Google's Shopper Index research. And this looks into kind of shopping habits, and we can see that I think it was around about 50% of fashion shoppers in the UK are going online to research price point, promotion before going straight to a brand. Now, what does that mean from an advertising standpoint? It means that you are able to help influence that consumer. They're not going straight to a brand. 57% are thinking, what is the brand that I want? And they are actively searching. So I think it's about being, on the consumer's mindset, being front forward and fast when it comes to that search activity. So you've got the search advertising standpoint. Then playing to the passion point. When a lot of these consumers are on YouTube and so on and so forth, and they're browsing their passion point, and they're in that mindset, having some of the more inspirational video advertising in correlation as well to drive uplift. I think consumers now are looking somewhat at quality over just quantity, which we saw during the pandemic. I think they are looking at longevity over just cheap. What do I mean by that? I mean, instead of just going and buying particularly like fast fashion, looking at, even if the price point is a bit higher, how much longer will that item last? And thirdly, and I think we touched on this earlier, around payment. So what are some of the payment options that you have in place? Can you pay in installments? How are you advertising that as well and making sure that consumers know about that? And then lastly, on the brand value side of things, communicating that story. So it's not just about the product, but what's the meaning behind it.
And I think so many brands, Patagonia springs to mind, are talking very much more about actually saying, we don't want you to buy this garment, but if you need it, this is how long it will last, and putting that value proposition in, but saying, we're not fast fashion, this is an item which can last you 5, 10, 20 years and still be good. And I think that is really leading back into the environmental credentials we spoke about earlier.
Yep. I think what is also really, really good for advertisers to bear in mind when it comes to the inflation side of things is, you know, I mentioned earlier about the generics, so people coming in and not going straight to a brand, but actually researching and discovering a bit more. But if you want to retain that brand loyalty, how do you do it? So let's think about retargeting. You've already bought a product from a brand, having that clean first-party data, having the privacy on top of that we mentioned earlier. So ensuring that you've got that retargeting piece. And then looking into things like whether it's the loyalty cards or the promotions. And again, making sure that with the following you already have, you're cultivating that trust through the privacy and then that excitement, that loyalty through the promotions and other things too. So again, that will be another key thing during these economic times.
So finally, Harmony, New Year coming, 2023. We know there's going to be a big change, and some of the challenges we've already spoken about are going to carry on. But what are the most important things retailers should be thinking about, especially with their advertising programs for the new year?
There's a lot, and I know we have covered a lot today, but I'm going to summarize this into, let's say, the 4 or 5 main points that I see here. So the first one would definitely be that automation piece. You want the efficiency, you want the agility. So making sure that everything is running and driving relevancy in the cleanest and clearest manner for the consumer and for the brand alike. The next one, and it pivots into this point, would be the privacy side of things. So ensuring that strong first-party data strategy done in a trustful way and making sure that it's clean first-party data. The third one I would say is about thinking green. So this ties back to the sustainability, the circular economy and the brand values. It's not just about the product, it's about what's behind that product. Is it ethical? What's the brand story? And this is done in a really, really authentic manner. I think that's completely key. The other piece here I'd say would be around, you know, brands being able to be agile and pivot. I think we've covered this a lot.
And brands have had to do it an awful lot recently.
Yeah, exactly. Brands have had to do that a lot. So I think that again is completely fundamental and key. And the last one would be the omni-channel strategy. So ensuring that there's diversification when it comes to the way that you're communicating with consumers, especially looking at the consumer mindset and purchase funnels. So whether it's intent, whether it's discovery, connecting with them in a very streamlined way that communicates your brand to keep them excited, engaged, and loyal. And that would be it in a nutshell, Chris.
Harmony, we've covered an awful lot. I just want to thank you so much for your time today. And if people want to find out more, obviously we'll be covering these topics in more depth on ChannelX in the new year. So have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much and a Happy New Year. Thank you, Chris.